So continuing our preview to Dundalk's Europa League playoff round against Key from the Faroe Islands at the Aviva Stadium on Thursday night. Delighted to be joined by Dundalk's opposition analyst and coach Shane Keegan, who's been a very busy man in recent weeks. Shane, good afternoon. How are you?
Jamie, how are you getting on? You well?
I'm very good, thank you. Yourself?
Good. Yeah, busy.
Yes. Now, fantastic photo of the staff, the players, the injured players sprinting towards the penalty celebrations last week in Moldova. You among them. What a night.
Brilliant, Jamie, wasn't it? Yeah, fantastic. I don't know if you could ever call anything I do sprinting now, to be quite honest about it. But yeah, moving as fast as my little legs will carry me, I suppose. But yeah, it was brilliant. And look, honestly, I know the old cliche penalties are a lottery, but I thought it was well deserved on the night. I thought we played really well. Possibly could have won it in normal time. I mean, to go behind so early and react so well, the character and attitude the boys showed was just so impressive. It really was. And yeah, as I say, required the cool heads of being able to convert the penalties on the night, but I challenge anybody to say that it wasn't deserved, you know.
Gary Rogers, of course, hours from his 39th birthday, the hero, and I was fascinated to hear in a couple of interviews about the goalkeeping coach Steve Williams and his two cones to give Gary a little indication as to where the penalty taker traditionally puts his penalties, which I'd never heard of before and I found very interesting.
Yeah. Look, Willow's a clever fella. I think he's used a similar look. He'll always change what the technique of how to get the message to Gary is. It might be, you know, sticking different arms in the air. It might be sticking cones in the air. You know, there's various different codes we can use. Obviously, we'll have to change it again to if it was to go that far again. But yeah, look, the two of them are forensic in terms of opposition analysis when it comes to penalties. Literally after taking a break from doing it there now, just to have this chat with yourself, I'm about halfway through having a look at any previous penalties they had. And look, I suppose you do as much homework as you possibly can to give yourself the best chance you possibly can. Sometimes the homework means very little, because the penalty Gary saved, we'd never seen him taking a penalty before, so that was just a brilliant stop by Gary. But look, at the same time, it's important that you leave no stone unturned.
Yeah, I spoke to Greg Sloggett just a few minutes ago, and he was saying that some of the players had asked to be able to watch a full 90-minute game of Key, as well as the clips, the different functions of the game, to actually see the context of, you know, the first 15 minutes if they lose a goal versus the next 15 minutes and so on. For you, and I know you spoke recently about having to do all of this online like everybody is at the moment with all your analysis, you haven't been able to go and watch any of the opposition teams. How have you used your role to prepare the players week on week in the last 3-4 weeks with three kind of obscure enough European teams?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's kind of a two-pronged approach, Jamie. One is give them as much information as I possibly can that I think might be of value to them. And then the second is make it very clear to them that any information you want, just let me know. So you will get different fellas coming looking for different little bits and pieces, and you'll pull stuff together for them as well, on top of the I suppose the general template of, right, here's what they do in possession of the ball, here's what they do out of possession of the ball, here's what they do in the transitions, and here's how their set pieces work. I mean, that's the fairly basic layout of it all. But there's quite a fair bit of work goes into all that, all right. And yeah, I think it was last Thursday morning, we just stuck on a game in one of the video rooms and just let it run for a half an hour. I think we showed the first 20 and of both halves, just so lads could get a look. This week I just sent them out both European games. So earlier in the week they would have received Key's game against Dinamo Tbilisi and Key's game against Young Boys Bern. So you're kind of letting them off to do it in their own time in that sense. But yeah, look, as I say, it's probably only 5% maybe of what's important in terms of trying to get the right result on the night. But it's, look, from my point of view, I'd like to think it's an important enough 5%.
Yeah, we've really seen since kind of lockdown the importance of everybody in the world using things available to them to help them in their lives, whether it be Zoom or Skype or WhatsApp groups or WhatsApp voice notes. And in the context of football, you know, apps like Strava and the players having GPS, and now the access that all of the top football clubs in the world have to a couple of different platforms to see videos and information and stuff. And it really is just a massive help to you and the footballers at the moment that all of those tools are available to help prepare for games in what's a very strange time in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, it still is extremely valuable to go and sit in a stadium and see a team playing with your own two eyes, where you're able to take in the whole pitch at one time. But given that nobody is able to do that at the moment, we would, I think every analyst, football analyst, sports analyst, would be absolutely lost without a platform at the moment. And in fairness, both Wisecout and Instat are absolutely fantastic, both in terms of you've been able to get a look at everything you need to look, and then in terms of being able to, the various drawing tools and clipping tools and all that, so that, I mean, the biggest challenge really, Jamie, in terms of presenting the information is the editing process, because, I mean, I can't show them the 5 hours. If I've watched 5 hours of content on a Monday, I can't show them that 5 hours of content on a Tuesday morning. That 5 hours has to find a way to find it to be distilled down to about 20 to 25 minutes of what is essentially the key information. So that's probably the hardest part. Is I really enjoy the watching the games. It's similar to when I was very similar. You would have done a few bits yourself, James. It's very, very similar to writing. You write a piece. When I was writing, you'd write a piece and you get to the end of it and you think it's great, and the next thing you realize it's 2,500 words and your word count is only 1,000, and all of a sudden you're trying to compress the thing down. So very kind of similarities there, I suppose, in that sense.
When you typed key of the Faroe Islands into Google on Thursday night at 12:30 after the match, or maybe before the last round, before you talk about kind of the football and how they play, what type of information did you immediately find when you were researching a bit about kind of the club, their history, their players, their manager, that sort of stuff? Yeah,
I mean, to be honest with you, you're not probably going too much of a deep dive on that. I mean, in my presentation to the lads, the first page of it has a few bits and pieces similar to what you've just said. Like, you're telling them that it was their first title in 10 years. Last year, they hadn't won it since 2009 previously. You're giving them some information on recent results. You're giving them some information, the standout, I suppose, the standout number from our perspective was they won the game last Thursday night 6-1 with 29% possession, which is extraordinary. It's a complete and utter outlier in terms of a statistical point of view. So little bits and pieces like that tend to paint a picture, I suppose, for them. But yeah, apart from that, to be honest, I suppose as you would expect, got in touch with Brian Kerr, just to see if Brian had anything that he could give us. And again, little few bits and pieces. He seemed to think that the size of the pitch in the Aviva and could suit us, and that they'd be very used to Astros. The fact that it's not on an Astro probably might work in our favour. Different bits and bobs like that. Just trying to paint a general overview. We were getting information during the game. I was told at half time how much they were up last Thursday night. I suppose the only frustrating point of view, taken from my point of view, is, I mean, after the previous round, literally after the final whistle, you're on the bus, you're driving out of the venue, and you're immediately starting your work for the following week, because there's that much in it. But unfortunately, being in Moldova, I think within 5 minutes of landing, we'd all got texts to tell us that we'd spent about €50 in credit already. So I had to wait till we got back to Dublin the next day before you could start kind of doing anything on them,
Yeah, I had Brian Gartland and Filippo Civagnoli on this last week doing previews, and the Wi-Fi was sketchy in the hotel, so I can't imagine what the data was like when you weren't actually in the hotel as well.
Yeah.
Chatting to Greg, he says that they're quite direct, and I'm sure you got some fantastic information off Brian Kerr as well. But I'm sure there's massive confidence in Dundalk, given the results in the last few weeks, given the performances, even though last week was on penalties and the previous week was a 1-0 with a red card and so on. But just the opportunity that's there for everybody involved, the staff, the players, the club and stuff, it's something that I'm sure everyone's so excited about now come 7:30 tomorrow night.
Absolutely, there's a fantastic vibe and feeling around the place, obviously on the back of this run. And I mean, I saw somebody say the other day, and I thought it was probably the best way of phrasing it, is let's be completely honest about it. If we could have drawn any team to play at this stage of the competition, of those that were left, it would be Key. If Key could have drawn any team to play at this stage of the competition to try and get through, it would have been us. Without a doubt, It would have been us. So they're licking their lips as well, thinking they've got a real chance. So both sides have benefited from the draw. There's no doubt on that side of things. But like, we just have to look at it in terms of, I don't care how good a performance they bring, or even if we were playing, one of a so-called bigger team, if we were able to deliver in the manner that we did last Thursday night, I think we'd beat a hell of a lot of teams. I really do, because it was, it's a compliment to the boys that so many people seem to have thought Sheriff weren't a great side, because let me tell you, Sheriff haven't been neck deep in them for a week beforehand. They're an absolutely excellent side. But the way we pressed them and hassled and harried them stopped them ever getting into any kind of a flow. And I suppose and it's not even a concern, but the only concern you're guarding against is that lads think you just quite simply can't have any single player thinking that anything less than last Thursday will be good enough. Everything that they delivered last Thursday has to be repeated, even find a little bit more if they can. If we do that, well, then I think we'll stand a really, really good chance, you know.
Shane, lastly, because I know you're jumping back to look at more video and stuff, your own role has changed a little bit in recent weeks, and I'm sure you're also very excited at the increased importance of yourself in the new management team. When you joined as opposition analyst, when Rory Higgins left, Vinnie Perth was the manager, John Gill was there, and then Alan Reynolds came in. And now it's Filippo and Giuseppe who don't have experience in this league. And I think you're in with them every day, and you're on the training pitch and you're on the bench in matches. And there was, I think, the graphic that came up on the stream last week had you down as the manager. I'm not sure if it's because you have the pro license. You might just explain to us how all that's worked. And I'm sure it's just for you. You manage Wexford, you manage Galway, but this is definitely a step up.
Yeah, UEFA regulations are a great thing, Jamie, aren't they? I got a mighty promotion on the back of them.
Yeah.
Back of them last week. But no, look, I've said before, basically, in fairness to Vinny had every box ticked in terms of what he needed. He on the training ground, match days, all that kind of stuff. He had the personnel there, and just the way the shake-up has worked. Obviously, the new manager Filippo requires a good bit more of me than Vinny would have, and I'm absolutely delighted to try and give him everything that he wants. So yeah, look, more than anybody, when you become more involved in something, there is a bit more enjoyment to be got out of it, and. Look, I'm just, I suppose, from my point of view, is just constantly saying to Filippo, you tell me what you want from me. You tell me what you want from me. I'll try not overstep any boundaries. You tell me what you need, and I'll try and deliver. But at the same time, let me assure you, there's only one decision maker. Filippo's a really, really kind of confident guy, really, really assured, knows exactly what he wants. Will seek my opinion on things. I could argue, for one player over another for 20 minutes, and I can tell you at the end of the 20 minutes, it'll still be Filippo's.
Yeah.
It'll be Filippo's man who gets the nod, and rightly so, because he is the one who will ultimately live and die by the result. And so far, so good on that front. So, no, look, really, really enjoying it. It'll be, there won't be too many of us, I suppose, tomorrow night who it'll be their first experience of the Aviva. It will certainly be mine from a managerial perspective, or being involved in the management team kind of a thing. So even that, I'm just really, really looking forward to. The boys are kind of looking at me as if I have two heads. They've been through it so many times. They're well accustomed to it. But for me, it's an exciting thing to be involved on a bench in a big game like that. And look, fingers crossed, everything kind of goes right in terms of us producing our best on the night.
Yeah, Greg Sloggett's first time in the Aviva 2 tomorrow, so my two guests on this podcast are Aviva newbies, which will be a nice experience tomorrow. Shane, very lastly, just popped into my head, 6 o'clock tomorrow, the opposition team sheet comes in, and you quickly have to check the notes you have to predict the team that you've given, and then very quickly look and go, have they made a change? Who's this fella? Where's he going to be on corners? Is this going to change their style? Is he 6'7"? Does someone else need to mark him? That kind of half an hour time when that comes in is an interesting one when you're involved in trying to just make sure, because here in the league there's no real surprises, whereas in these matches there could be someone could arrive and play that you've not seen yet.
Well, look, Jamie, maybe I'll be made to eat my words, hopefully not, but we think it's a hell of a lot more straightforward this week. The 2 previous weeks were a nightmare, really, in that it was very, very hard to get too much concrete information on the Andorrans, and because they had a kind of a relationship with FC Andorra, who play in La Liga, there was a hell of a lot of bouncing of players between the two clubs, and you actually struggled to figure out who played for them and who played for FC Andorra. Yeah. So, there was one name on the team sheet when the team sheet came in that I had, honestly, and maybe it's me not doing my job well enough, I had thought he was an FC Andorra player. I didn't even think he was eligible for that game that night. So that threw a bit of a spanner in the works for me in that one. And then obviously last week, the turnover in players at Sheriff is absolutely colossal. Like this season, they had 4 players who survived from last year's European campaign. And even the week leading into the game, they released their centre forward, their most high profile player. And they also released their left winger and then signed a new left winger, Kolovos, the Greek boy. So, there's transfers and chopping and changing the week leading into the game. So you're it's a major guessing game in terms of trying. Now, we didn't do too badly. We'd predicted 10 of the 11. There was only one change that we didn't, only one name that we didn't expect last week. With these boys, their starting 11 for the last couple of weeks has been rock solid.
Right, okay.
Absolutely rock solid. So I'd be really, really surprised if there were any major, changes to that tomorrow night. So look, I think we're fairly well informed in terms of how they're likely to line out.
I am backing you for 11 out of 11.
Good man, Jamie, hopefully.
Great stuff. That's Shane Keegan, opposition analyst and coach with Dundalk. Shane, thanks for your time on a busy pre-match day -1. Enjoy the Aviva tonight for training and getting on the pitch for the first time, and of course tomorrow too. I'll see you there tomorrow night, and the best of luck.
Cheers, Jamie. Thank you.